staying with us. The past few years have been difficult for the South African Post Office. The institution is in a dire financial state, but its former CEO, Mark Barnes, believes it can still be saved. He's offered to lead a consortium to raise funds to buy between 60 and 75% of the Post Office. For more on this, we are joined by Mark Barnes, who's in studio with us. Thank you so much for your time, Mark. We do appreciate it. I think the first question that probably all South Africans want to know is, why would you want to buy something that's in such a dire state and that's constantly making losses every year?
Heidi, thanks for your interest, and hi to your viewers. You've got to reposition your mindset around what the post office is. Okay, it's not a post office. It's a commercially irreplaceable footprint that's got more physical representation than any bank in South Africa. It's got the biggest repository of data, people's data in South Africa, 18 million beneficiaries, 11.8 million addresses, 6 million depositors. And so I can go on, and it's linked to the national payment system through the bank, which was one of the reasons I left when they wanted to move that. Okay. And so if you look at the top 5 or so companies in the world, you'll find that they match that kind of description. They data plays. They plays on getting economics out of data. Okay. I have a slightly different view when it comes to South African people in the post office, which is, how do we virtuously serve the people of South Africa in a valid business model? Because the post office has got a dual mandate, commercial and developmental. And for that, it requires the state to be a partner, but it requires business to run it. And so that's what I'm looking at. I would argue that what we were looking to do, which was to find a place where the informal market could be comfortable in the formal and digital environment. That place is the post office. Go to any town in South Africa, look for the building that's most centrally located, that's still in reasonable nick. It's the post office. Okay? And so I would say, imagine if you could go to a place where you know the people, where you started with a little savings book one day, and you're now going there to get vaccinated, to collect your antiretrovirals, to get some post, to pay your accounts, to get a passport. Because, of course, the post office is an organ of state, so it's linked to the Home Affairs. And so we could have this massive supercomputer on which all people of South Africa resided, and this access to and from them via a physical infrastructure. You can order a bicycle on the internet, but you can't ride it until it arrives. Okay, so you have to have some physical infrastructure to complement, the digital world in which we operate. Now, this is not about what we could do locally. This is about international interest in such an infrastructure. And if you look at the models internationally, I mean, Amazon bought a stake in United Parcel Service. Why? Because they needed a physical delivery partner. Okay. I know of at least 2 major organizations that would have a strong interest in partnering the best distribution network in Southern Africa.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, and this is a perfect service that South Africans really want. But that's not the service that you get when you go to the post office. I was horrified when I went there last week to renew my disc for my vehicle, and they did not have a pen. The staff don't have pens. So hearing you say how this service can be provided and all these grand plans, you were previously at the post office, you were the CEO for quite some time, you left. What do you think is going to be different this time around if you go back? Because from my understanding, you want to go back also as a CEO.
Yeah, so this requires capital. You can't starve a developing mindset with no money. Okay, so we will be prepared to invest capital in not only what's there now, but in an agreed funding of future losses. Okay, that has to get this thing up to scratch. Now, one of the aspects of my offer is that 10% of the shares of the post office will be owned by the staff and the unions, for that matter. Okay, we will create vested interest and common purpose. In fact, this isn't a discussion about the post office. This is a discussion about South Africa. We lack common purpose. We sit on opposite sides of the table with our various inferiority and superiority complexes, not being able to cut a deal. Okay, and so in the midst of that position taking, there's an absence of an economic model which of necessity, in the case of the post office, must have the state and valid business principles and economics driving it. Now, we need to find that middle ground, okay? Because the post office is a series of equations that are imbalanced. The post office has certain rights for delivering parcels under 1 kilogram, for clearing customs at the airport, and so on. And it has certain obligations. If you live in 1464 Section F Diepsloot, we have to deliver post to you. There's an equilibrium about that, an obligation about that, that could be translated into a virtuous business model. For example, it became apparent to us that people who are on social grants had 4, 5, 6, 7 funeral policies. Not necessary. We would make sure they had the best one. Or they had a medical aid that didn't, or they loaned money at an exorbitant, extortionist rate. Okay? And we would say to them, don't carry the cash around. Leave it in Postbank. Collect your 400 Rand that you need tomorrow. Now, all of those things were coming into being. You must remember when I arrived there, we didn't have social grants. Okay? We fought for it and we got it. And we took it away from the private sector. And we took the economics of what people saw as a profit-making opportunity and turned it into a service. The payment of social grants is not a business, it's a service. It's a necessary thing which should be done efficiently. And it's a big business. The turnover is what, 200 billion? Show me a business that's got 200 billion turnover that can't run at a profit.
Sure, but I mean, the staff don't even have pens, which people might say that's insignificant, but it just speaks to the state of our post office.
No, the fact that it's in a state of disrepair is beyond discussion, okay? I mean, it's worse than that. It's beyond commercial despair. It's into, it's into technical bankruptcy discussions. It's into not paying the pension funds. These are criminal things, not commercial things, okay? Not paying cross-medical aid contributions and the like. And so what is required of it is to think about it differently and wonder if there isn't a different way of looking at it so that it could attract the right kind of investment. I think I bring that process and that capital.
So the capital you're speaking about, how much are we looking at? So the money to invest in this in the post office, how much is it actually worth at the moment, and what kind of capital are we talking about? Can we put a number on it at this stage?
No, I don't know what it's worth, but I've left that for the Auditor General to determine, so that it's a valid and transparent process. I've said we will buy it at its net asset value, whatever that is. The Auditor General can determine, and there's value in the post office. I happen to know what the balance sheet of the Postbank used to be, which was an entirely safe balance sheet. The assets comprised money market deposits and so on. And then we will agree again with the Auditor General forecasts that have been placed before the Portfolio Committee which show the extended losses and the required capital. That number will be worked out dispassionately, audited, and placed on the table. We will pay that. We'll invest that.
Okay. So, Mark, you were there before.
Yeah.
You left. Many would say that it's almost as though you tried. I won't say you failed.
You don't have to be polite to me. I'm a grown-up.
Don't you think that, it's a failure, and why would you want to walk into an environment like that where you can see the state of our state-owned entities? It's not just the post office, it's almost every single state-owned entity. Many are asking, what's the interest? Is there something behind it? Why are you so interested in this?
I live here. This is my country. And this combination of forces and balances and middle grounds and equilibrium is what we voted for. The coming togetherness of us is what we were about, not the separateness of us, not the I stand on one side of the table and criticize you on the other side of the table, and we're both so convinced that we're right that we never find middle ground, okay? So why am I doing it? Well, because I think it's valid and I think it can be done, and it's been done all over the world. There isn't a single post office around the world that runs at a profit that isn't deeply connected to financial services. So when they wanted to take the bank out, I said, I can't do that. I can't have a sustainable economic equation if you take the bank out, okay? Whatever your purposes may or may not be, okay? And I'll tell you this. I've been asked to talk a lot about the turnaround, which we hadn't succeeded in doing. And when I finished the talk, people say, you didn't talk any numbers, you talked people. Because what we changed at the post office is the culture. We introduced the prospect of economic dignity and the prospect of cooperation and understanding each other's roles and so on. And I just feel I didn't finish my work. When I left, we were still making losses. Okay? When you plant a crop, the first period of the whole episode is planting and costs and digging the ground and putting the seeds in. You have to wait for the harvest. Okay? But we already had harvest. We already took away the 1.2 billion profit that were being earned by the private sector out of the payment of social grants, brought that back into the fiscus. We already took back over $1 billion of Section 26A deductions that were being foisted upon the gogos for loans that they could never afford to repay. These things take time and they require common purpose. And I remain convinced, and I'm not alone in this. And by the way, I'm not the only business person. This isn't the only idea. There is a groundswell of private sector eagerness and capital waiting to partner with government.
Have you spoken to government? What has government said to you about this proposal?
Well, the reason why this proposal is in the press is because I sent it to the government 4 months ago, and they hadn't responded other than to acknowledge that they'd received it. And so they hadn't responded yet. I expect they might now. I hope they will. This is not a combative issue. This is a request to engage and to see. Because what's the alternative? You've seen the alternative. There isn't a pen. Okay? And what's the alternative if what I am proposing comes together? Well, the state is still the biggest earner out of a profitable organization. We pay tax. They earn much more than the shareholders do. Okay? So wouldn't you want to have 25 or 40% of something that's paying dividends every year? Telkom is an example of a hybrid mixture that worked and that got listed and attracted capital, led by a good CEO, fundamentally changed direction. Things that solve problems make money. People ask, I've often talked about these things, people say, well, give me an example. Take Uber. Why do you think Uber works so well? It changed the world. Instead of you looking for a taxi, the taxi comes looking for you. Yeah. Okay? IBM, everyone said there'll never be a small computer. Well, Kekuleke, no. Okay? There's one on your desk that's more powerful than this room would have taken to fill in the IBM days of yore. Kodak. I can go on and on and on about how change with insight and capital can make something that is apparently dead very alive.
How do you think government will respond to this? I know you say you don't have a response, and I'm going to ask you this with a second question. I know that, if I'm not mistaken, it's 2015, 2016, workers were dismissed. There were huge issues at the post office, and of course everybody looks at the CEO when such happens. How do you plan to, I don't want to say redeem yourself, but yes, redeem yourself, because when workers are dismissed, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of unhappiness, and going back to be the CEO, many would say, oh, it's you again, our problem's actually going to be solved this time around.
Well, I think you might find a completely different attitude if you were to ask the people involved, including the unions and the people that work there. And I'll let you have my cell phone for a while if you like, or better still, come to any branch that you'd like to go to with me. Let's go to Tshwane Mail and walk around, okay? That would be the first point. First of all, the numbers that you're talking about, the gross dismissal and all of those kinds of things happened before I got there. Not that I care, but it was, I got there, after that retrenchment and downsizing. I wasn't responsible for that, but I was responsible for containing, and there were reduction in numbers while I was there. But the difference was this, and you should get the unions and ask them, or the people themselves, was that we understood what we were doing. I explained the income statement. We gave people a choice. We said, we make this many apples, and you want this much. We're either going to share the apples, or you're going to get rid of the people. I'm going to call a press conference to say, let's share the apples. What do you want to say? And they go, let's share the apples and grow them. And if you think about offering people shares, it's got this characteristic. We will struggle. It'll be hard to make money in the post office over the next 2 or 3 years. So how will I reward you for your loyalty, for your common purpose, for your vested interest? Give you shares. Can you imagine the change in mindset when a postman is walking around, not only with some letters in his bag, but with a share certificate in his pocket? Come on, man.
When you left the post office, is your relationship with government a good one? Do you think they'll be forthcoming to this proposal that you've put on the table, given the fact that they haven't responded to you? I mean, how do you foresee this going?
I haven't got huge expectations, but I'm respectful of government and the challenges that they have. And I would argue that my moving out of the post office was entirely amicable, and I've since had amicable engagements with them on more than one other subject. And so, I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I believe that even if they don't respond to me about this initiative, they should respond to the notion that private-public partnerships are a way out of this that are better than any other. And so I'm hoping that it'll be form part of that impetus. And I think I'll be welcome back there, if I might venture an opinion. If we can define the mandate, what we really need to do in SOEs and other government-controlled entities is define the mandate. What is your job? What have you got to do? And then let the specialists get on and do it. And for so long as you're in your box, heading in the direction that you agreed with government, for goodness sake, let the people who've done this before know how to do it. A, do it, and B, train other people to do it as well. We need not only, this is not a takeover by business of government. This is a partnership to introduce a new mix of skills and experience into the future of our country. I was asked once in a big senior position in government, why are you doing this? And I said, well, because I want to go to the beach so that you can run the country. Okay, we've got to have a transition. We've got to have a transition of knowledge and expertise and a mutual swapping of ideas and understanding. We've got to listen. And the only way we can do that is if we start making enough space in the middle ground between us for such initiatives as this to emerge with mutual respect. I mean, one of the examples of success post sort of 1994, believe it or not, is rugby. Who would have said? Okay, the Blitzboks and the Springboks are both world champions. Go and look at the profile of that sporting mix. We can do it. We can add ourselves together. We can find the best in each other, and we, the private sector, make the capital. Government doesn't make money. The only source of money for government is tax. The only source of tax is profit. So why don't we go to the source of capital, that understands capital, that knows how to put it to work, that's got the experience, and become their partners?
Mark, I've completely run out of time, and my APE is going to be very upset, but I have to ask you this last question. There's a huge trust issue in South Africa. We don't necessarily trust the services government render because most of the time there are many issues. But there are private companies like courier companies, Postnet, that provide these services that the post office should be providing. So why should South Africans trust this new consortium that you are proposing to give them the services that the post office should actually be giving us and not stick to the private sector?
So that argument is true not only for post, but for private healthcare, for education, for security, for all of these kinds of things. Someone else can do the things that you think the post office should do, but they'll do it for less than 5% of the population. That's why. That's not a deal. So you'll be able to courier your Rolex to your cousin in Cape Town, but will I be able to deliver my letter to my aunt in Umtata? No. This is not about further entrenching elite participation in a subsection of the economy. This is about offering a broad-based participation in our future. So, yeah, someone can do it, but not for everyone.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for your time and your insights. And will you let us know when government responds to you, if they respond to you?
You'd be the first to know. Why wouldn't I call you?
Thank you so much for your time. That is Mark Barnes, who's the former CEO of the South African Post Office. Still to come.